Managing expectations is not only good in sales, but it's also good for you as an individual, as a professional. To hear our thoughts and more, stay tuned to this episode of The Den. The Den, powered by the Lyons Group, a show dedicated to exploring hot topics in real estate, local happenings, and industry trends. We're a small team of professionals approaching $400 million in sales and nearly 2,000 local transactions. You're listening to time-tested experts and industry leaders. Here's a refreshing look at real estate happenings and more. Welcome to The Den. Hello and welcome to this episode of The Den. And today we're going to be talking about managing expectations, not just for your clients, but potentially for yourself. There's some thoughts that would help you as a professional in the sales arena if you manage expectations on all fronts. But before I get to that, let me introduce my friends, my partners, my co-hosts, the fellow members of the Lyons Group. To my left, Paul, hand me the Rockberry, Aspen, the Ninja Gruen, and the boss, Shannon Martinez. My name is Ben. I don't know what I'm doing, Lyons.
We can vouch for that.
Yes, and welcome to this episode of The Den, where we're going to be talking about managing expectations. And in real estate, we have to manage expectations all the time. And I think it's important for our viewers to understand some of the thoughts behind that, because it really is a key component to how we conduct business, specifically in real estate sales, but also I want to parlay into managing expectations potentially with yourself. I know there's some things there, Paul. I mean, you can't go to the fridge every time and grab the milk for the Oreos. You gotta set some boundaries and manage.
What in the world are you talking about?
I know. See, I'm off the rails. Just so everyone knows, Aspen told me I can go off the rails this morning. So,
yeah.
So talk about managing I have no expectations for this podcast.
Yes. Okay. All right. So, well, let's jump right into it. Seriously though, on a serious note, the thing we've been struggling with in today's industry is we've got a lot of changes happening, right? With the buyer broker agreements that are coming down, that are required now to show properties to buyers. Sellers may be holding on to yesterday values and how quickly their homes should sell in their eyes. So there's a lot of expectations that are being put down on realtors, and we have to combat that to some degree, because the reality of it is that it doesn't always work that way. So we want to speak to that a little bit. So Shannon, I'm going to jump to you first.
All right.
And talk to us about one of the most important expectations that you should manage in today's business as a real estate agent.
I would say just immediately your first probably meeting with your customer is to be honest. Don't tell them what you think they want to hear, what they think they know, but maybe start off with just being very honest and transparent about the market. We go to do a market analysis and they say, well, my neighbor sold this last year and so down the street sold that, by right away just saying, well, I'm going to bring comps for, what's been going on recently, what's been going on in the last 6 months. That's what we need to really look at. And maybe let them know right up front that, the market has changed. It's cooled a little bit if they haven't heard that interest rates are a little bit higher, that we might be looking at a little bit more time on the market. I think when they know that and then they start out, they don't feel like something's wrong. I think the problem is that people go on the market with the expectations of what last year or the year before was like. And then they think something is wrong. You're not doing your job, or there's something wrong with their house, or, something is wrong out there. And it may not be that. There's just that the market conditions are different these days. And I think that people need to know that right up front so that they understand and can just shift gears as they need to through the process. Perspective
is everything, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what we're talking about today. Paul, when you first started in this business, we had more of a buyer's market. I mean, it really was. And so we did a lot of managing expectations with our sellers.
Yeah.
So talk to us about,
It's funny that we're having some of those same conversations now.
Yeah.
Because the market has changed. We had such a kind of a fast market over the last few years, and it's really not that at all anymore. Back in 2017, when I started, you could, just let your phone ring and you got 5 houses that you can list. And there were no buyers. We used to fight over buyers. I remember when the buyer broker agreement was talked about back then, that's how you locked somebody in. And you'd have to ask, do you have a buyer broker agreement? Now we're doing that for real. We have to do that. We used to have the conversation with sellers go, there's not a lot of buyers out there. And you are one of I think there was 800 homes when I first started. Yeah. You're one of a bunch of homes. So you either have to wait until you're the best one left or price it appropriately, make it stand out in the crowd. And houses were, for the last few years, going pretty quickly. Now they're starting to sit. Average days on the market right now is anywhere from 40 to 60 days, where for a while there it was about 7 to 10 days. Yep. So we're having those conversations to say, that's what I was thinking about with managed expectations. This may take a while. I've been telling people there's a buyer out there. We just don't know them yet. We haven't found them. Mm-hmm. So that's what conversation I'm having with sellers.
Yeah. I think buyer or sellers still think that you put your house on the market and you just wait your 24 hours and then we'll sift through our 12 offers. Yeah. and sometimes that happens, but not often anymore.
But they're not willing to start at the price that would allow that to happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. And ultimately benefit them in the sale.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, Aspen, how do you handle when a seller really wants a price for a property and it's not necessary, it's not out of bounds, but it's just not really realistic in the market? How do you handle that with the seller?
I would go over the different options that we have. And I think we've talked about it in another video. If you're going to price competitively and low, odds are you're going to get closer to that higher mark versus if you just price it right where you want it. It's going to kind of push some people away from your property. But if you kind of create a bidding war in this market right now, it works really well. Who's to say if it will in a month or two, but right now, I think that's a really good look for sellers because we don't have very many houses on the market. So if you're coming in with a good product, a house that you've taken care of and is nice and clean, and we've talked about how to get your house ready to sell, and then you come on and you're priced, I wouldn't even say low, just competitively, you're going to get more people looking than if you're pricing at your top mark right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just experienced that with a property that we listed intentionally a little bit low, and we netted, I think, 5 offers, and they got $20,000 over asking price, right, which was pretty incredible. I mean, it just works that way because then you're bringing the market. And that was my argument to the sellers. You're bringing the market to you. Everybody that's interested, I mean, they're not sifting through thousands of listings. They're sifting through dozens maybe, and they're seeing yours hit the market, and you're bringing that pool of buyers to you, and then they're competing against each other. And there's something to be said about when people compete, right? It usually nets you the best. And then I have the other side of that.
You know what another interesting component is to that is if I price a house, and just for round numbers, at $100,000 and I get one buyer, maybe it was a little too on the high side, and I get one buyer and one taker, and the appraiser comes in and says, it's kind of on the high side. It's a little bit different when you price it maybe at $90,000 and you had 7 offers and it was 100 or 105. It's easier for that appraiser to see that the market drove that price there. The buyers want that. The buyers are willing to pay that. They set that price. That's a lot easier to justify, even if it's on the high side, than if we set that price.
Yeah, and it's very valid for an appraiser to ask, was this a multiple offer situation? I mean, were there multiple buyers that pushed this up and had that question?
Sure, they'll call and say, where did you get your comps?
Yeah.
And I say, well, I priced it appropriately and the market gave me that price. And that's a little bit easier, I think, for them to swallow and to accept than we just set it there. And we had one guy from another state that didn't know the market very well and took it.
Yeah.
That the buyers were very well aware and they wanted to pay that for it. They wanted to pay that for it.
Yeah.
Well, there's another component to expectations with sellers. They're looking to put a down payment or what the cost is going to be of the next house. So there you have their margin of what they're going to get when they sell their house, and they say, I have to be here. Mm-hmm. And if I can't get here, I can't sell. And when they do that, a lot of times they are at the top of the market and they're not getting what they need out of it. And I've got a few of them right now that are, have offers on contingent properties, and I'm trying to pull them down, saying you've got to get, if you want to make this work, you've got to get down to where the market's telling you you have to be, or we're just going to be terminating another another contract.
Yeah, and that actually brings in a next level point. I like that, Paul. The fact that people are making decisions based on what you are telling them as a professional. And I've got that same instance right now where for some buyers are looking to sell their property and they're trying to make decisions on the property that they're buying based on what they can reasonably expect to sell their home for. And I started at a price point and we've pushed up now $30,000 above that, and they're making decisions on that. And so I'm bringing them back down to look, here's my original thoughts on pricing. And you need to base numbers on this, not on pie in the sky, because that may not come to fruition for you. And that could affect if you're going to buy this property or not. So all great things to consider for sellers, because the market is indeed changing. How do you handle maybe a seller that says, well, another realtor told me they can get X price, which is a lot, maybe unrealistic for the market? How do you handle that?
You know what I find interesting is that I try to tell people in this market right now, and this may not be different in a year or two, but right now, you really cannot underprice a house in our market. If you price it low, because we do have such little inventory on the market, that if you price it low, you're getting multiple offers and they will drive it up where it needs to be. So if somebody says, well, my house appraised at, again, for round numbers, $100,000, and that's where I would like to put it at, or I'm going to put it at 110 so I end up there, why don't you try pricing it at $99,900? Why don't you try pricing it at $95,000? Why don't you try doing that? You're more likely to get multiple offers than if you start a little bit higher.
Yeah. Yep. And that is a fair point, because the market is there. I mean, again, it's different if
you're not going to get less.
Yeah.
you're not if you only get that 95, that's probably all that was there to begin with.
Yes, exactly. And that comes into managing the expectation, right? Mm-hmm. Understanding the game that you're playing versus just going out and playing, and then people are upset. And so I've had to do some managing of expectations here lately with a lot of sellers I've been working with. One in particular, I love to death, wonderful family, and they are selling their home and they're making an incredible amount of money on the property over the last 3 years, which is wonderful. Very happy for them. But one of the things is that the market has told us that they're not going to get even more money for their home. So we've had to do some price reductions down, and we've eventually found the market. And it's, there's been some comments of, well, I guess we'll just take it on the chin. And I'm going, no. Reframe that to, you're doing really well. You're doing really well. It's just that we had to find the market. We tried up here and it didn't work. But, if they're not careful and if I'm not helping them, they're going to walk away and go, man, that was a tough experience. And they made an incredible amount of money. So it's all about perspective. It really is. Aspen, can you expand upon buyers right now, managing expectations with buyers because of the way the landscape has changed in real estate as a whole? What are some of the thoughts that you want to share for buyers in this market?
I think it depends what price range you're in, too, for buyers' expectations right now. If you're looking on the higher end, you're probably going to be able to negotiate a little bit. You're probably going to be able to take a little bit more time, look at a little bit more properties, and really kind of narrow down what you're wanting, kind of like how we used to do it. If you're still in our average price point or lower, you're probably going to still be competing. There's not going to be a ton of negotiating. We'd like to say there is. I had a buyer just 2 days ago, and he said, oh, this house needs $30,000 worth of work. I'd already spoken to the listing agent, and she was able to give terms for what it was. And she told me, we already have a full price offer. So in that instance, I said, he's like, well, if I submit an offer, I'm going to be low. I'm like, well, this probably isn't the house for you then. Let's keep looking. And then that was fine with him, and we found something else, and it was fine. So, I think the expectation of wanting, especially if you haven't bought a house in a long time and you're really wanting to negotiate in the average price point, it's still a seller's market here. So I think managing the expectation of that is kind of key right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a great point. Paul, you want to add anything to that with buyers in regard to managing their expectations?
Well, I think I've already said this on a podcast, but when I have a buyer and we go into a house, I say, if you want to put in an offer, expect that they're not going to fix anything. So expect that it's going to be as is. Now, if you're going to, you want to write an offer and you are expecting that they're going to fix the roof, replace the furnace, restucco the house, all of those things, and they say no, and then you're going to back out, well, don't make that offer. So I would say, if you like the house enough, expect they're not going to do anything. If we can get something out of it, or, if we can negotiate something from the seller, then that's a bonus for you. So I'd say your expectation should always be as is, unless they've offered something in the listing.
Yeah. So you're reframing the perspective for the buyer. Like, look, this is baseline. This is what you can expect. And then if you do get something, they do decide to fix the roof or restucco or do something like that, then that's just gravy. Right?
Yeah. Because how many times do you get a buyer that says, I'll buy this, but at a discount, and then they want the roof done and all of that. So I have that conversation ahead of time to save a lot of that, a lot of those issues.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people in this market also think, if I'm competing with a couple of other offers, I'm just going to make mine the highest, the best offer that I can make it, and I'll get it back on the home inspection. That's not always a great strategy, because if you're competing with, 5 other offers, there are other people out there willing to take that house. That, so be prepared that you are willing to pay for that house the way it is at the price that you're offering. Don't expect the future negotiation. There is future negotiation that you can do, but don't expect that that's where you're going to get your money back at.
Yeah, and that's where the managing expectations comes into play. Having those conversations with your buyer up front is pretty critical, because again, it's all about perspective. Reality is perspective, right? However you perceive something, that's the reality to you. And so if you can help guide that and shape that for the clients that you're working with, or even for yourself to some degree. So that's part of the next conversation is, as a professional in sales, how do you manage expectations for yourself? I mean, for me, I just set the bar really low, right? as low as I can go.
Yeah, I consider myself unemployed.
No, but in all seriousness, I think this is something that, because we do have a lot of realtors that watch this podcast, especially younger realtors that are just starting out. You have to find a healthy balance. And I don't want to take any talking points away from anybody, but you have to find a healthy balance between pushing yourself too hard, having unrealistic expectations, and setting the bar too low where it's just too easy. So Aspen, maybe you can speak to that. How do you manage your personal expectations on how you perform in this industry?
I am actually going to kind of go a different way with it, because whenever I first started, someone gave me really good advice. They said, don't cash your check before it's in your bank account. And
very
I think
good advice.
Especially new realtors, you get very excited. You're getting that big check. You've already spent it. You put it on a credit card, because we're closing in a week. Everything's done. Stuff happens the day of closing. Not all the time, but sometimes. And we've all had it happen. So I think that was one of the best, managing your expectations. Don't expect that money to be there, because if you're not used to a sales job or a commission or compensation based job, it can really bite you later on. So we can go on expectations with, set a really high goal. And if you get anywhere even close, for me, that's fine. I just am striving for that goal. But if I set too low of a goal, then I'm going to want to kind of get lazy after that. So my personality, I don't mind setting a high goal and not necessarily hitting it, but that might not work for you. So I think in that regard, you need to do what works best for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like shoot for the moon, and if you miss it, you'll end up in the stars type of thing, where you're setting these really lofty goals. And we did this for a lot of years. We would set these goals that were just outlandish in our eyes, and we would, miss them every year. But boy, we just kept, incrementally getting better, and our stats kept going up. And then Paul I think it was you that finally said, hey, let's set some realistic goals.
What if we hit one?
What if we actually hit one? And I got to tell you, I think that was the best year that I've personally ever had, is that we set a little bit more realistic. And not only did I hit that goal, I exceeded it. And it was like that. It was kind of like a pin drop moment, like, oh my gosh, I finally hit one of these, and it felt amazing. And so there is a balance there. I guess it depends on how your personality is. Shannon, what's your personality? Shoot for the moon and end up in the stars? Or
no, I'm with you. I like to keep it low.
Yeah.
Keep those expectations low and keep impressing myself every day.
Wow, look at me. I'm doing it. It's just, I'm doing it every day. Paul, now that you've seen both, which would you prefer? Set those goals high or a little bit more reasonable or low and crush them every year?
I would say I don't know. I don't know.
I like a reasonably high, not like something outlandish.
Yeah, like I'm not going to say.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sell 200 houses this year.
Yeah.
I like to set yearly goals, but I also like to, take them in small chunks, not necessarily daily, but weekly. What did I do this week? How did I, did I work hard enough to make a check? The other thing is in this, like Aspen was saying in the sales job, is you may not have closings for a while. So you have to have a plan for that too. So the expectations are, I think, just put in the work and the results will come. I think if you set the bar too high, then you start to stress. Then you say, I'm not doing good enough. I'm not doing enough. And you start to press and everything gets harder. I've had a lot of times in this career that you press too hard and deals are falling apart and you're trying to push to closing and you're not listening to the customers. So I think I've turned more, I know you won't want me to say this, but less the stats on the board and more the experience that people are having is that's kind of my goal.
Yeah. And I'm actually okay with that. I mean, we use stats quite a bit just for fun to kind of gauge where we're at, but really it comes down, and who's the one that says, give yourself grace all the time? I'm always beating
Who's the one stressing the most? That's why he has to say, we got to give ourselves some grace.
I say that because I'm saying it to myself, right? Give yourself some grace, Lyons. No, and I think what you keyed in was pretty critical, Paul. It's a great point.
That's two compliments.
I didn't expect that from
compliments.
Two compliments.
You didn't expect that? Okay, now we're back to normal.
Two great points in one podcast. It's shocking. But what you said was that, your expectation for yourself, whether in sales or some type of a business like this or industry like this, is that if you put in the work, you can expect results at some point. So maybe the managing expectations for yourself is, I'm going to continue to work, even though I may not be seeing the fruits of my labor right now, but I'm going to continue to work. And then at some point, those seeds that I've planted will begin to grow. And it will become a profitable business for me.
And realistically, are you doing the work? I think we can say, I've been working so hard, but have you? I know for me, sometimes I've been like, I've been doing so much, but really I'm just busy with life. I'm not actually working very much. So it's like having that realistic conversation with yourself too. Am I doing the steps, the old school steps that worked and they're not fun and but they work? Are you cold calling? I hate cold calling with like deep in my gut, but it does work.
You'd have to be a twisted individual to love cold calling.
I don't think anybody enjoys it.
Wake up in the morning and be like getting your stretches like I'm fired up for some cold calling today.
Right.
That's a brutal.
That no train that I started, I think I had 1,000 numbers that I called, but I came in every day going, I've got to get through this to get to success.
Yes. Mm-hmm. You did that well, and you managed your expectations with that. And for our viewers, I think we mentioned this on a podcast a long time ago, but when Paul first got into the business, we handed him a dead list of, a cold list of past leads that we had probably 1,000 deep. Right. And he just started what'd you call it? The no train?
The no train.
The no train. He just jumped on the no train. And it honed your skills with being able to talk to people, his confidence, and how, what he brought to the table with real estate. I mean, there was all kinds of, it was kind of like the Danielson wax on, wax off. You have no idea why you're doing it. Right. But it came to fruition.
Well, and talk about manage expectations, that you expect the no. When you get the yes, that you're almost shocked. It's kind of, if you go the other way and you expect the yes, you get defeated. But when you get that one yes, and there were quite a few yeses in there, but as soon as you get it, you're like, okay, let's get to work now.
Yeah. You weren't trying to talk him out of the yes.
Yeah. I was like, no, it's supposed to be a no.
It's supposed to be a no.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Are you sure you want to do this?
Did I call the right number?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, great insight there. I'm going to jump right into the speed round here. Why is managing expectations so important, either on a personal level or a professional level? Shannon, I'm going to jump to you first.
Well, nobody wants to feel like a failure. Your clients don't want to feel like a failure, and you don't want to feel like a failure. So if you have a rational mind behind you to start off, I think that, you can usually achieve and you can exceed your goals. If they're unrealistic from the beginning, then, there's never a chance.
I love that.
Yeah, that's enough said.
I know.
Can't beat that.
Paul, so you agree?
No, I can't beat that.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Aspen, do you want to take a shot?
I was just going to say it makes the difference between a good experience, a great experience, or potentially a bad experience for your clients. So managing expectations up front really sets the tone for how the whole process is going to go.
It's funny you say that, because you could have the same situation with just different expectations, and it could be a win, it could be a neutral, or it could be a total loss in the same situation across the board. So it's so important.
I want to say too, talk to your clients about what their expectations are. And if you can communicate that, then you can push towards that. Like communication, time frame, all of those things. And once you understand that, then you start to mold how you handle the process based on those.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about that.
Yeah. And I love it. Seek first to understand the situation. So, we could have another follow-up podcast on this topic. We could also move into goal setting, which I think is always a great thing, but I'll come near the end of the year when we do our New Year's resolutions, and we'll revisit a podcast where we give our predictions. But let's jump into my favorite part of the podcast, which is the Lyons Pride. And as fellow members of the Lyons Group, we go out into the community and we do things in the community to make our community better. And we like to highlight people, events, organizations that do the same and welcome them to the Lyons Pride. So Aspen, you are up with today's Pride.
I am going to do the River Reach Foundation for the Lyons Pride. They are a local 501c3, and their whole thing is protect, promote, and enhance Farmington's river corridors, basically. So they do trail development. They have done river park and trail improvement, recreational opportunities along the river. So anything like with the Berg Park Trail, they are in charge of all of that. They do Riverfest every year. That's kind of their big fundraiser. They have put in different dams up kind of near Penny Lane that have made the river flow different. So they're putting in work these last few years. So I'm sure everyone here can attest how much better the river experience is here in Farmington. And it's thanks to them putting in so much work.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah. That's wonderful, because we have a fantastic amenity. Not a lot of people know this, but I would say 65% of the above ground water in New Mexico, the surface water, runs right through San Juan County. And that's a huge amenity. So thank you for highlighting that. And the River Reach, they have rolled their sleeves up and done some great things with this wonderful natural amenity that we have. So thank you for bringing that. And Berg Park's fantastic. The River Festival that they hold every year is wonderful. So if you are a part of the River Reach, thank you for rolling your sleeves up in this community and doing some great things there. We all appreciate it. We all get to use those amenities. And it's a great attractor for people moving to this area. That's one of those things that people look for. They want some trails. They want some ability to enjoy their outdoor space. So again, thank you, River Reach, for rolling your sleeves up in San Juan County. And welcome to the Lyons Pride. So thank you for that. Well, what a great episode today about managing expectations. And before I lower anyone's expectations, we're going to sign off. But thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. If you like our content, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our Facebook page. We have Instagram, TikTok. We have all the great mediums. Take the time to schedule with one of the members of the Lyons Group for a consultation, a private consultation, whether you're a buyer or seller. We'd like to give you an advantage in today's market. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. Thank you for listening to The Den, powered by the Lyons Group. Hit the subscribe button to keep informed on real estate happenings. If you'd like to learn more about the Lyons Group, visit sjcbroker.com. Complex markets require complex strategies. The Lyons Group can give you a true advantage in any market. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, contact us directly at sjcbroker.com. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in The Den.